Hi there, it's Matthew from Upkey Media, back again with some more property management marketing tips. What we're going to be going through today is how to market a property management business that services multiple cities. So what you should be doing, whether or not you should have one website or multiple websites, these are things that we're going to be going through on today's video. Remember, if you want to get more property management marketing tips, like and subscribe to our channel. So in your property management business, of course, you want to service as many areas as possible, and being able to service those areas by having, different business locations and things like that can be a great strategy because no matter what, you can kind of advertise yourself as being a local business. However, marketing multiple locations can be a real challenge. So what we want to do is give you tips on how to effectively market a property management business that services multiple locations. So first things first, you have to know your options. Now, there are two effective ways of marketing a business that serves multiple locations. Option A, you have one website that has all your different locations on one domain. The second option is having a separate website for each location. So every region that you service, you have a separate website that's specific to that region. Now, both these methods are effective. However, there's pros and cons to each one. And there might be a situation where one works out better for you than the other method. And that's why we want to kind of explain these pros and cons to you so you can make that decision. So first, we're going to go over having one website that services multiple locations. So again, when you have one website that services multiple locations, what you want to do is make sure that each location has a dedicated page on the website. So you don't want to just have, one property management page that talks about the different areas that you serve and just kind of encompasses everything on one page. You actually want to make sure that you have a page that's dedicated to each location that you service. Now, with that, if you have a lot of different locations or service a lot of different regions, it's important that you organize this on your website. So you want to make sure that you have an areas we serve page that shows each different region and all the different cities that you service in that region, or even have a drop-down menu that divides everything by each region that you serve. So now let's go through the pros and cons of having one website that services different locations. By having dedicated pages, Google's crawlers are going to have an easier time deciphering which geographic area you service and can rank one website for many different location-based keywords. So, having everything on one website can make it so that as long as you have dedicated pages for each location, you can still potentially be showing up on the search engine for all the different location-based keywords that you want to be targeting. Now, another pro is, of course, if you have an investor who's looking at investing in multiple different areas, different regions throughout the country, it's going to be a lot easier to navigate one website than finding all the different websites that you have servicing each different region if you want to have a separate website for each one. So that's another pro if you have investors who are looking to invest in different markets. Lastly, any backlinks that you build, so any source of references from exterior websites that point back to your website gets built, those are all going to point to the same website. Whereas if you were doing marketing for, all these different websites that you have separated based on each region, you would have to do a backlink build of each different domain that you have. So this makes it a lot easier from a marketing perspective. Getting backlinks that all point to one domain is going to be a lot easier of a process. Now, let's go over some of the cons of having one website that services multiple locations. Google's crawlers do have a crawl budget, so there's a certain amount of pages that a Google crawler will go through. Now, of course, this won't be a problem if you have, a few locations that you service and you have a few different location pages, but if you have a lot of different locations that you serve and a lot of different regions that you serve, well, then you're going to be more at risk of going over that crawl budget, which can lead to issues with your SEO. The other con of having one website that services multiple locations is outside of the location pages, it kind of makes it harder for general pages to have a focus on a specific area. Whereas if you have separate websites, throughout the website, no matter what page you're on, those pages can have kind of a focus on the geographic region, so make references to that and things like that. But the general pages on one website that services multiple locations, that'll have less of a focus. Now, let's talk about having separate websites for different locations that you service. So if you're going to do this, you want to make sure that each location has its own domain, and those domains are going to service Specific regions. So if you service Los Angeles, you want to make sure that you have a website dedicated to that region. If you also serve Detroit, Michigan, you want to make sure that you have a separate domain that's servicing that area as well. Now, if you can, it's a great idea to be able to get the name of the region that you serve into the domain. So if you're propertymanagement.com, you want to make sure that you can have propertymanagement.detroit.com or something along those lines. If you can fit the name of the region within the respective URL, that's going to be very beneficial from an SEO perspective. Now, even if you're doing separate websites for each region, within those websites, you could also still have location pages. So again, if you are doing Detroit, so you're servicing the region, you can have, the website dedicated to Detroit, but also the surrounding suburbs, because you're focused on the region, not just the city. And even though that you have these separate domains, you can still connect to one another throughout the content. You can have links to some of the other websites that you have on there. So even though you have these separate websites, you can kind of connect them through a network. Now let's go through the pros and cons of having separate websites for each region that you serve. Having a website that's dedicated to one region keeps content compact and focused. So that's one of the pros of having a separate website for each location you serve, is that website is now focused on that specific region. Going back to the URL, if you can get the region inside the domain, then that's going to be very beneficial to you from an SEO perspective. So that's another pro of having these separate websites for each region, is that you have that ability to be able to put the region within your domain. And lastly, we talked a bit about crawl budget when we were talking about having one website and how having too many pages can be a bad thing when it comes to how much crawl budget the Google crawlers have. Now, if you have a website dedicated to each region, that's not likely to come into play. You're not likely to ever be going over that crawl budget. So keeping the website more compact means that Google is going to have a better time crawling the website itself. Now, cons, you're going to have more work. The reality is, if you have multiple websites, each individual website is going to have to be optimized on its own for SEO. So there is going to be more work. However, again, with that crawl budget, it still may benefit you overall. Lastly, it might be harder to build overall authority if you're having multiple websites for each location. The issue is, of course, if you're writing a blog, you have to be writing blogs on all the different websites, and you can't be creating the same blog and copying and pasting it to each website. Each website needs to have its own separate content. So the workload itself and building up that authority is going to be more of a challenge the more websites you have. Next, we're going to talk a bit about Google My Business and how it's important when you're servicing multiple areas. Now, the most important thing, no matter if you're doing one website for all your locations or if you have separate websites for all your locations, it's important that you build a Google My Business page. If you don't have a Google My Business profile, that's a problem. So you want to make sure that you're building a Google My Business profile. And depending on whether or not you have multiple locations, you want to be building multiple Google My Business profiles. Now, the benefit of Google My Business is you can effectively market multiple areas using this platform, and it's something that's freely available for everybody to use. So if you don't already have a Google My Business profile or a Google My Business profile for the multiple locations that you have, it's important that you build those out. Now, if you have one physical location, but you service multiple areas, there is a service area section within the Google My Business profile that you can put in all the different areas that you serve. So it's important that not only are you building out this profile, but you're using it effectively and putting in the different locations that you're servicing. Hopefully you learned some information about how you can be marketing these different areas, whether or not you're going to be using one website for all your areas, or if you're going to use a separate website for each region that you serve. Hopefully you got the information that you needed. Now, if you'd like to learn more about our inbound marketing process, feel free to sign up to our 30-minute growth marketing session. What we'll cover on this call is our proven growth blueprint, the groundbreaking traffic analysis, an unparalleled competitor breakdown, and a surefire conversion system. So visit our website. We'll link it on the link below and schedule your session today. Thank you for watching today's video, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button in the bottom right.